So, a while ago, I did like films that you should watch during lockdown, and obviously, lockdown as such is kind of not really much of a thing anymore if you go about and see people just behaving like nothing's happening. But if, like me, you don't want to be responsible for the deaths of other people, then I thought I would do some books that you should read on lockdown, which is kind of hard because everyone's book taste is totally different. Mine is like eclectic at best, okay? I read all kinds of stuff, whether it be fiction or non-fiction, so there's bound to be something in this list that is like worth a read, but some of them are proper classics that you definitely should read. Some of them are kind of new ones that made me smile or made me laugh and kind of just take the edge off everything that's going on right now. So, there's got to be a top 10 because you know how I feel about top 10. And I've got a list of books that you should read while all this is going on and you can't really carry on as normal and do normal things. So, number one is Great Expectations, which, if you've never read any Dickens, then frankly, what are you doing with your life? For a lot of years, I couldn't really get into him because he is quite bleak in a lot of ways. I mean, not for note did he write a book called Bleak House. But yeah, what I love about Great Expectations is you have to view it as it was at the time, because if you stop to think that the old wizened spinster Miss Havisham was probably only 40 or so, then your mind will get blown. But yeah, basically it's about an orphan boy called Pip, who is raised by his sister and brother-in-law, and one day the solicitor comes and says, you've been given a fortune, well not a fortune, but you're given like a steady income to bring you up in the world, and there are great expectations on you and what you'll become and how you'll do in life, but you must not ask who your benefactor is. We will not tell you who your benefactor is. And I'll give you a spoiler because do you know what? The book's over 100 years old, frankly I ain't spoiling nothing for nobody. It's actually a criminal that he helped as a small boy who remembered him because he showed him a bit of kindness, and as kind of he made his way in the world and went to Australia, was transported and made a bit of money there, he remembered Pip because he had nobody else really to leave his money to. He left his money to Pip. Yeah, but all the way through he thinks it's this Miss Havisham who has brought him around to play every now and then and has adopted a little girl called Estella, who's basically, she's bringing up to bring down men because she's angry at men because one jilted her at the altar, and she spends the rest of her life in her wedding dress with her wedding cake rotting on the table, mice running around it, cobwebs everywhere. It's a brilliant image, but again, it will depress you when you realise she's probably 40. Yeah, another thing I really like about Great Expectations is it doesn't have a happy ending. But it doesn't. I mean, he befriends Herbert Pocket and they sort of go off and make money together and get on really well, and he's his best friend, and he helps Herbert marry the girl that he loves, who has this like father that's really not keen to let her go because he's, if I remember correctly, I think he's like an alcoholic or he's unwell with it all this. Yeah, they go off to China and make the fortune. He comes back, does Pip for a visit, and you think that him and Estella are going to get together because in the film, 1946 version, they do get together. In the book, they do not. You think they're going to get together, and then he looks at her and goes, oh my god, she's turned into Miss Havisham, she is crazy. I'm off back to China, to my friend, to my fortune, have a lovely time. I like that because I think it's much more realistic than thinking Pip's going to make himself miserable with this woman. I like the fact that he goes back to what he knows and what makes him happy, and the really great relationship he has with Herbert Pocket. So yeah, Great Expectations, definitely worth a read. Bit wordy, you're going to have to live with it. Unlucky, it's Dickens, that's just how it goes. Number two is Operation Mincemeat, which is, it's non-fiction. It's about Operation Mincemeat, which, if you don't know, was an operation during World War II to plant false information to the Germans about British invasions, about where they were going to come ashore, and how it kind of all happened because you couldn't make it up. You genuinely could not make it up. They basically had to find a body to plant all this information on, to dress him up like he was in the RAF, to create him a backstory of a girlfriend and like a would-be fiance, buying bus tickets for journeys he might have been on, create this whole life for this guy in the hope that the Germans would fall for the lies that they were trying to peddle them, basically. And they did. Yay! But it's a really interesting story because, I mean, a myriad of reasons, really. The whole load of improbable things happened. They couldn't find the right body for a long time. They couldn't work out how to get it onto this plane and drop it with the vital documents attached to him. They didn't want them floating off. They had to leave it for a long time to create enough of a backstory and establish this guy's character and who he was. Yeah, it's brilliant. And actually, on the staff of people that were helping to create this guy was a young officer by the name of Ian Fleming, who went on, obviously, as we all know, to create James Bond. And you can kind of see where he got a lot of inspiration from for some of the crazy tricks and the more, I mean, not so much like the big outlandish things that James Bond does nowadays when you think of the films, but the everyday simplicities, if you like, of the trivialities of MI5 and creating lies. You can see where that came from, so I find that really, really interesting. Number 3, I've just put down Harry Potter because I think you should read them all, frankly. I hadn't read them for a long time, and I read them not so very long ago, and I'd forgotten bits about it. I'd forgotten how brilliantly well written they were, insofar as you get to like book 5, 6, 7 and you think, oh my god, they mentioned that like 4 books ago and I didn't realise that was going to be important, but it is important. There's so many like callbacks where you think, oh, I get that now. This is crazy. Of course it's all linked. Of course everything's building up and building up and building up. You know, there's a bit in the second book that I hadn't clocked where Harry is in Filch's office and Fred and George create a distraction, and Filch says, oh, I think they've destroyed a valuable vanishing cabinet. So of course it's damaged, it goes in the room of requirement. And in book 6, that's what Draco Malfoy uses to get into Hogwarts and eventually try and kill Dumbledore. It's crazy. It's crazy the amount of foreshadowing and foreplanning that went into it. And there's so much in there that's not in the films that you definitely should go back and investigate. I mean, I could do a whole like 50-minute blog on stuff that's missing that I would have liked to have seen in the films. It's stuff like when they go to St Mungo's and you see Neville visiting his parents, and it's heartbreaking because they're not a full shilling because they've been tortured by Death Eaters and their mind's gone. And his mum has a toffee and gives the wrapper to Neville like it's a little present that she's really proud of, and Harry notices that Neville puts it into his pocket rather than the bin. And Neville's grand says, you've got thousands of those at home, and he's like, yep, I know. And it's so sad because you understand the characters so much better when you read the books because there's things that can't be vocalised or shown in the same way. So I definitely recommend reading books if you are so late to the party that you haven't already. Frankly, they are brilliant. So you've got a whole load of time in your hands where you can't go out, do things, go to theatres or whatever else that other people get up to, because that's what I'm focusing on. Reread them. Why not? You've got plenty of time and they are brilliant. So yeah, Harry Potter. Number 4 is And Then There Were None, which I wanted to put an Agatha Christie book on this list because I love Agatha Christie books. I think, I mean, you can tell as time wore on that she was getting a bit more doddery and a bit not as sharp, shall we say. But And Then There Were None is probably one of my favourite books that she wrote, and probably one of my favourite books, full stop. So what And Then There Were None is, and it's been made into films and TV shows no end of times, and they always change some of the characters so that they can cast someone who's like dead dishy in the role, or, you know, make one of the characters that's a woman loads younger when actually she's an old lady in the book. And it really annoys me because the book as it is written is kind of perfect. So what it is 10 people are invited to an island, basically, and they go to this island, and on the first night a recording's played by their unknown guest host who cannot be there for whatever reason, saying, I know that you've all committed a murder. You know, you did this, you did that, you did the other, you were responsible for somebody's death in some way. But basically, it's something where you can't be tried in court, or you've been, you've wiggled out of it. So one of the ladies, the old lady, threw her maid out when she was pregnant, and the maid went and drowned herself. So he says, you're responsible, you didn't help this lady in her hour of need. There's a boy racer that was speeding and killed 2 kids, but the court said it was just an accident, one of those things, they were in the road, whatever. The doctor is an alcoholic and has killed somebody on the operating table by accident, but it was covered up because, you know, he had a nurse in there that had his back and said no, that, you know, he was fine. It was just one of those unfortunate things, people do die. So it's all crimes like that that you think can't be proven. And it's really, really kind of tense because you think you've got it. You think you've got it sussed. Okay, they're getting whittled off one by one until there's like, you know, only a couple of them left. And just at the last moment when you think you've got it, it cuts to like a police inspector and his report on it. And he's saying, but we got to the island and everybody was dead. But everybody had an injury inflicted on them. Nobody, you know, if you tally the story of people that have left notes and stuff, the only people that killed themselves were earlier than the people that were murdered. So there must have been another person on the island, but there wasn't. And I won't give the end away because I just won't. But there is a bit at the end where you're like, oh my god, of course, this is genius. I bought this. It's a red herring. And I just hook, line and sinker went for it. So yeah, that is good. Definitely read that. Definitely get into Agatha Christie that way because it is one of her better ones. As I say, it's probably my favourite. There's some that I think are really, really good and some of the short stories that I think are amazing. But And Then There Were None is my favourite full-length book, 100%. Number 5 is The Haunting of Hill House, which if you have watched it on Netflix, well done. It's brilliant. It's probably one of the most perfect pieces of television that have existed for a long time. Even Stephen King was like, this is terrifying. Like, people were genuinely getting ill because of how scary it was. And if you read the book, you can kind of get that in that as well. The TV show is loosely based on it. Like, it's not an exact copy. The characters are different. Some of them are the same, some of them are altered. They change it into a family rather than just a classic people in a haunted house kind of situation. But yeah, The Haunting of Hill House does follow it insofar as it is this house, and they use a lot of the same dialogue and description. And it's a haunted house mystery where Eleanor is probably the main character. She goes and she is more affected by this house than anyone, and she wants to know why. And then at the end there is kind of a, oh my god, geez, that took me by surprise kind of a moment, which I will not ruin again. But it is scary. It really is scary. It's phenomenally well written insofar as you can visualise everything and you feel the tension and you feel your heart going. I couldn't put it down. I got through like half the book in one night. I was there at 1 a.m. reading it, and then by sheer coincidence the picture fell off my bathroom wall, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I was petrified. That's what the book did to me. So I would definitely recommend reading that. Watch the TV show by all means, read the book. It's brilliant. Okay, the next one is Free Country, A Penniless Adventure, The Length of Britain. Quite a wordy title. I had to look at that one. Just clock that. And what it is I got it on like a Kindle download donkeys ages ago, and I loved it. And it's a true story. It's non-fiction again, and it's 2 guys, and basically they start off at Land's End and they have to get to John O'Groats without spending a penny. All they can do is trade stuff or ask for help, and it's basically a bit of an insight into how friendly or giving the British people are, or in some cases are not. They start at Land's End in a pair of Union Jack boxer shorts, and they've got to get to John O'Groats. And, you know, people start saying, oh, well, my kid's going out of this bike, why don't you have it? And they've got to ride on like a trike, a pink trike with ribbons on it because that's what they've been given, or sleep in a barn, or, you know, bakeries that are throwing out old bread, giving them an old bit of bread to eat and stuff. But it's really heartwarming because they go to places where, I think at one point they go and there's like a wedding or a party or something in a barn, and they're like, why don't you come in and join us and have some of our food and have a good time and sleep in the barn out back or whatever. And that's what they do. So some people are really, really nice, and they do get stunner goats. Spoiler. But it's how they get there and the story of it, and it's written with such humour, and you can visualise what's going on and the different places so well. You can sort of see everything unfolding in your mind's eye, and you can picture the people that they're running into because you know people like that. It made me chuckle a lot, you know, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's quite affirming in a way that good people out there will help you in your hour of need. Recommend that. Number 7, again, I've just put Sherlock Holmes. Whatever. Read them all. I will say, if you read them in order, A Study in Scarlet isn't the best book. And I'll tell you for why. Because it was written initially serialised for a magazine, and you can kind of, I don't want to say you can tell, but I will say that you could stop at the middle and you'd know who'd done it. Like, they tell you who did it in the middle, and then it flashes back to why everything happened and everything that's gone on years before. And I don't really care for that particularly. It's not Conan Doyle's best. I prefer the short stories to the full lengths, if I'm honest, because you just get a little snapshot of Holmes and Watson's relationship and a little insight to, Holmes is a genius, he's done this. And I prefer them because you get to kind of explore a lot more things in short stories, which I know sounds like a contradiction in terms, but you get a little bit of Conan Doyle tackling issues like the KKK, racism, there's a bit around like treatment of women and how he admires one woman because she's so independent, and Watson thinks that he's gonna, you know, go for her, and he's like, no. I think she's a phenomenal woman. Marry, you know, if she gets tied down by any man, that'd be a waste. There's a lot of kind of issues in there, and having a lot of short stories means you can tackle a lot of things, and they are really clever. A lot of times in them you do kind of go, well, how in the hell would I have known that, Holmes? But a lot of times the clues are there. It's just it's narrated from the point of view of Watson, who isn't very observant, which therefore gives you the means to solve it before Watson does, even though you know Holmes has got it in like 4 words in. And you get little bits of their relationship as it develops, with Watson getting widowed, moving back, Holmes obviously dying at Reichenbach Falls, and then coming back. And yeah, you get to see different aspects of how they grow as people, because it cuts between timelines, because it's done as if Watson's just examining his case files, if you like. And loads of people genuinely thought that Watson was a real person and that Holmes was a real person. And when you look at it, you can kind of see why. But I definitely recommend them. They are brilliant. They are the absolute last word in detective fiction. You will not get better than the Holmes stories. And it is so right that they have lived in infamy for so long. You can't beat them. Even if I've put Agatha Christie ahead, you cannot beat them. Number 8 is The Secret of Crickley Hall. Again, that was made into like a TV drama a while ago, and it was alright, but it kind of missed a lot of things out, as TV dramas are wont to do. So basically this family move into Crickley Hall, and it was used at one point as like a home school type thing for people who, well, children who were kind of sent as refugees from London during the Blitz. And the book has brilliant bits where they go back to the old orphanage in the Blitz and the old like hospitals where the kids were like treated and stuff. And it sort of goes back to there to tell the story of the children. And basically one night there's like a tragedy, there's a storm, there's a flood, the children die, but this family that moves in there is getting haunted by them, and they also have issues because they have a son that has gone missing, presumed dead, and there's a lot of, is the mother hearing her son or the child that she's like kind of almost bonded with as a ghost. So there's a lot of things going on in there. It's really good insofar as I like books that cut backwards and forwards in timelines. I like to see the link between, say, the 40s in London, that bit of it, and the modern day, or modern to whenever it was written, to be fair. I like that. I like that you can see a link between the behaviours that you're seeing then and now. I really enjoy that. There's a book that I haven't put on the list, a series of books by Kate Ellis, and basically they are archaeological and crime, and the archaeological things that they're discovering are linked with the crime that's being investigated in the modern day. And I really enjoy seeing kind of how human behaviour never changes. Let's be fair, humans are humans. We do strange things, we do stupid things, we do irresponsible things and good things all the time, and I like seeing that. So yeah, Secret of Crickley Hall, definitely go for that. Number 9 is The Railway Children, which the end just gets me every time. I don't care which adaptation on TV we're talking about, I cry. Point it at my TV then, like you know it's there. The book makes me cry. If you've never seen or read it, you're missing out. And it is a children's book, let's be fair, let's call a spade, but it's a children's book of that era where they didn't expect children to have a short attention span and have to throw in bells and whistles and all this kind of stuff. It's a story that is aimed at children. In a very adult story as well, you know. These kids have a dad that's gone off to prison for something that he didn't do. He's away from the family. They are suddenly finding themselves on hard times. They have to go live in this cottage in the back end of beyond, struggling to make ends meet, kind of relying on kindness of people that they meet and building relationships there. And yeah, at the end, dad comes home, everybody cries. It's perfect, you know. I really like the adaptation with Jenny Agutter as Bobby. I don't think you can go wrong with that one. But the book is exceptional as well, because you get to see a bit more, obviously, of how everyone's thinking and feeling, which is what you get in books. That's why I like them better than films or the TV versions, because on TV and film, people have to kind of say, I am feeling like this, I think that, and you have to almost have them interacting with other people that they don't need to be in order to express things vocally, or have a voiceover which is a bit disquieting, or you know, that kind of thing. In a book, it's just a book. It's written down. They were feeling like this. But yeah, The Railway Children is brilliant. I read it donkeys ages ago as part of a books I should have read kind of kick, and I really enjoyed it. Highly recommend it. Not just for kids, for adults as well. As I say, it does deal with quite like grown-up things in a way, you know, the whole poverty and dealing with loss and people being in prison for things that they didn't do, the lack of justice in the world. It's quite big. And number 10, last but not least, is What Would the Spice Girls Do? I bought this, I'm not going to lie, for the title alone. I know you say you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but I kind of did, and on a brief description of it. And it's written about how women of my age, very specifically, have kind of a very clear and specific version of like feminism compared to people who are like 10 years older than us or 10 years younger than us, because we grew up with like lad culture, the Spice Girls, all this whole 90s girl power kind of revolution. We grew up on that, and that has shaped us, whether we realise it or not. You know, I was reading it and laughing my head off because I recognised so many things from my childhood, so many things. You know, it mentioned how you were always one Spice Girl or another, and it wasn't necessarily the one you wanted to be, but that was your Spice Girl role in your friends. Okay, surprise, surprise, Ginger. Always wanting to be sporty. There's no way in this earth I was being sporty. So yeah, Ginger Spice. But what it says is how the whole myth around the Spice Girls, how they broke into offices to get their demo tapes back to go to a different management company because they weren't happy, about how they were totally different people, but the whole thing of girl power and supporting each other was we can get on even with any differences we may have. You don't have to be all the same. You don't have to be prim and proper to be ladylike. You don't have to be loud and bolshy and tomboyish to feel like you're a feminist. Baby Spice had pretty dresses and girly hair and did all that kind of stuff, but her view was just as valid as anybody else's. Sporty Spice's view was just as valid as anybody else's, you know. And it's true because I think about it now, and it did kind of that 90s thing of girl power and the girls that we saw on TV shows and cartoons and music. It does change your view on the world, because I did grow up thinking, well, yeah, a girl can do anything. Why can't a girl be sporty and a footballer like Sporty Spice, or be girly? Why can't we do all these things? Why do we have to choose? Why can't it be a combination? And it's really true. But then it has loads of like fun reminiscing stuff on about, you know, how devastated we were when Jerry left the Spice Girls, and weird stuff we used to do, like how there was always like really crappy hair dyes out there just making like your hair dye spray to turn you bright pink because it was a bit radical and a bit leery, like Scary Spice would do. You know, it's crazy when you think about it, but it really rung a bell for me. So if you're very specifically my age, you will enjoy that. If you grew up around the kind of late 90s ladette culture, Spice Girls, girl power, Spice Girls pinching Prince Charles's bottom, all that kind of stuff, you will love it, and it will ring a lot of bells, like a lot of bells for you. So yeah, there's 10 books. 10 books you should definitely read on not proper lockdown. You know, I know that there's a lot of different books in there, like a lot of different books, but everyone's taste is different, so there's bound to be something in there that you will enjoy, regardless of whether you like a nice crime, whether you like something a bit gory, whether you want to be scared, whether you want to laugh, whether you want to learn something about MI5 and they're ruling the war, because why wouldn't you? There's a lot to go at in there, so please do enjoy. And yeah, don't blame me when you're scared by the Haunting of Hill House, and don't blame me when you suddenly like want to go around going girl power and yeah, buying necklaces like this, like we all used to have back in the day. These necklaces and pink clogs, that was my aesthetic in like 98. And poppers, Adidas poppers. I want to go buy some Adidas poppers now, I really want some. I bet I can get some on eBay. That's what I'm going to do this afternoon. Investigate some Adidas poppers. Enjoy, everyone. Enjoy reading.